and welcome to India Global on NDTV World. Tonight we zoom in on the disengagement story in eastern Ladakh and Apple's manufacturing base shifting from China to India. I'm your host Rica Roy and here are the headlines of the hour. India-China disengagement gathers pace. This disengagement ends after over 4-year-long military standoff. Apple's big manufacturing shift from China to India. They ship nearly $6 billion worth of iPhones from India. North Korea's foreign minister arrives in Russia. The visit comes after North Korean troops confirmed in Russia. US President Biden warns of dangerous situation. Brazil's second BRICS nation to decline to join China's Belt and Road Initiative. Brazil opts for alternative collaboration with Chinese investors. Hezbollah names Hassan Nasrallah's successor. Naim Qasim elected new Hezbollah chief. After over 4-year-long military standoff, the Indian and Chinese armies are finally expected to complete disengagement in eastern Ladakh's Depsang and Demchok areas before commencing in coordinated patrolling of areas. The disengagement process, which is now in its final phase, involves both sides dismantling temporary structures and fortifications built over the past 4.5 years in these contested areas after the border standoff in 2020. Satellite images show the Chinese army removing various structures along the LAC, that is line of actual control. Today, both sides are likely to cross-verify the disengagement process before patrolling can once again begin. While the breakthrough between India and China is momentous, Foreign Minister Jaishankar indicated that it would take time before trust can be rebuilt between the two countries. Thus, the big question today on India Global is, can India claim this as a breakthrough, an achievement, or remain cautiously optimistic? To discuss this, we have with us Major General Sanjay Mestan, who's a defense analyst, and Gunjan Singh, who's China expert, who's an associate professor at the O.P. Jindal University. Thank you very much for joining us on the show. Well, it is a moment that we are talking about the disengagement process. Sir, Major General, sir, can we ask you the first question? Should India see this move with cautious optimism? Will India and China remain cautious neighbors or move beyond this?
Rika, good evening. I think I will start by saying India has to be very, very cautious. We have seen China's past pattern and it has emerged very clearly. I commanded Nathula Brigade. 1967, they had attacked the troops in Nathula. Thereafter, Sundarochung happened, and of course, Galwan. And before that, Doklam, the brigade which I had commanded in Nathula. So what I am trying to highlight is the Chinese track record shows that they simply cannot be trusted. Now, coming on to what is happening on ground, the disengagement process, as you have highlighted, is almost going to be complete at Depsang and Demchok. And what it implies is that once the process is complete, thereafter it will be verified by a joint patrolling from both sides. And once that has been done, I think both the sides will be able to patrol to their respective claim lines. Right. In our case, there are 5 patrol points, that is right from PP 10, 11 to 14 over there. And we will be able to patrol these areas. And similarly, the Chinese up to their perceived lines will be able to patrol. And the best part is they have to inform each other so that the date is known to each side. And this is to prevent the traditional face-offs. Face-offs implying when the two patrols would simultaneously on the same day meet each other, and that would result into a face-off. So this step, as on date, is a step in the correct direction. Right. It is definitely going to ease off the tensions between the troops who are deployed literally front to front, so that tension will be reduced, and thereafter we'll talk about de-escalation and finally de-induction. I doubt whether that will ever happen. But the underlying thing is that whatever we do, we have to be verifying everything. We have to be very, very cautious. I don't see much of optimism in this till the time China is not keen to resolve the border issue permanently with India. It has got 14 borders with the different countries. It has resolved with 12, less India and Bhutan. So why it is not resolving? India is very keen to resolve the borders. They are definitely not keen to resolve. And this is what the whole problem is. Strategically, if China accepts our Arunachal Pradesh, the eastern Ladakh, Aksai Chin, and of course the Shaksgam Valley, which was ceded by Pakistan, that 5180 square kilometer of area, if they recognize all this and give it back to us, and of course stop the cartographic aggression in case of Arunachal Pradesh, then I will be the first person to say, yes, we can trust China. But till the time they cannot resolve the border issue, we have to be extremely cautious and we cannot trust them. Rica.
Well, Major General says that we have to be cautious and not necessarily optimistic. Gunjan Singh, you are a China expert. Well, the border conflicts over the past 5 years have created a deep trust deficit. Tell us, how will India and China rebuild this trust?
I also agree that we need to be a little cautious going ahead. The fact that the de-escalation has started is a positive move. It shows that India-China are at least ready to talk and take the thing forward. If they were not talking, obviously there wouldn't be any solution going ahead. All the points made before are obviously valid. The mistrust is almost on a height. We've had the foreign minister also saying that disengagement is good, but de-escalation will only happen if we can build the trust. Last 4.5 years, the casualty is not only the fact that we were not talking or there were skirmishes and the border was obviously on a very high tension situation, but also that it has actually dented whatever the trust that was built over time with the confidence building mechanisms are completely broken. India, China, at least the leadership, have not been talking on major issues like resolving the border for the last 4.5 years, and trust will take time. I think building the trust, India will have to be cautious. We'll have to see what the Chinese do concretely on the ground and not just take their words. We should learn from the past. Obviously, they've dismantled the structures and everything, but in the next few weeks, how they react, how their media reacts, what the leadership is saying, what gestures they actually extend towards India will have to be basically studied and seen, that whether we can take them in the right way or is just China saying something and we should be cautious about the fact that they will go ahead and do something that works for them again.
Gunjan, let me ask you another question. Global Times has claimed that New Delhi's ties with United States and its allies are unreliable at the moment, which probably has forced it to ease tensions with China. How do you look at such coverage?
Obviously, Chinese it's a very nationalistic issue as well, right? Like if India did held on to the fact that they're not going to have a leadership talk till border becomes resolved, or at least the de-escalation or the talks begin. So India had made borders central to any kind of conversation with China in the last 4.5 years. We know that China was very keen to start the direct flights. China was very keen to look at investments. Chinese economy is obviously in a slowdown. They need to look, global economy is in a slowdown, but obviously India, China had to cooperate, India, China had to talk, and China had to figure out a way to start the conversation. Obviously, we can figure out who gave in, who didn't, but obviously India did stand firm and border de-escalation had to be started for the leaders to meet. They met on the sidelines of the BRICS, and that's definitely a positive thing. Now, domestically, the Global Times will have to indicate it a certain fashion. The American elections are right around the corner. We just had the Quad Summit. Prime Minister was there. And obviously, China is worried about the Quad and the Indo-Pacific and the other groupings that India is a very keen and a very prominent member of. So it's a domestic push as well to say that India cannot be trusted and India is doing it because the Americans want it. That's also undermining the Indian strategic autonomy or the fact that India is an independent state which takes its foreign policy decisions on its own. And border is crucial, and it should be crucial and should be central to how India-China interact going ahead.
Major General, sir, what will this joint coordinated patrolling by Indian and Chinese armies look like?
See, as far as the joint coordinated patrols are concerned, this is only going to be a temporary measure for basically verifying the area from where the both sides are doing the disengagement. That is what actually the fact of the matter is. So all these temporary structures and fortifications, they will be verified by two methodologies. One is through joint patrols and second is by the UAVs. And joint patrols would go on ground in the entire area and verify every structure has been removed physically. And once both sides are satisfied, I'm quite sure they will sign a certificate, and then after it will be clarified that the area is clear and therefore there is no necessity of doing a joint patrolling. Joint patrolling is only for verification. Once that is complete, thereafter both the sides will have the leeway to go and patrol their respective areas. I just mentioned to you, we can go right up to PP10 to PP14. In this area, we have 5 PPs in this Depsang area itself. And therefore, we'll be able to go unhindered. Chinese patrols will not stop us. We will go right up to the PPs and come back. Similarly, Chinese patrols will also come to their perceived claim line. They will also come. But the advantage in this exercise is that unlike in the previous years, what used to happen is that both sides, when they are going in the same area, there used to be a face-off. And sometimes in the face-off, because of the troops on ground, either side can do some mistake. Something can happen. The troops are there of both sides, and it results into some kind of escalation, some sort of a small fist fight or whatever can happen.
Right.
So that will be prevented. This is one of the best positive steps. And coming on to the other areas, like Gogra, Hot Spring, etc., Galwan, now those were actually termed as buffer zones earlier in 2022. That was what was decided.
Right.
Now, even in these buffer zones, there is going to be a talk. Either we continue it as buffer zone or we again go to our respective patrolling points. So that decision will also that will also happen. So this exercise itself of the patrolling to the respective area will take some time, and thereafter it will be de-escalation, and de-escalation itself is not going to be as easy process. Why? Because both sides have got large number of troops and mechanized forces deployed, and therefore what will be that line beyond which it will be termed as de-escalation. So this will again involve a lot of talks on ground. So it is going to take time. But anyway, I would say as a soldier that this is a step in the right direction.
Absolutely.
It will take a lot of time. But again, we need to be very cautious and we need to verify everything with the Chinese side.
Well, step in the right direction, but we have to be cautious. Those are the words from Major General Sanjay Meston. Thank you very much, sir, and Gunjan Singh for joining us on that discussion. With that, we'll take a very quick break on the show. When we come back, we discuss Apple's iPhone exports from India hit $6 billion mark amid efforts to reduce reliance on China. Stay tuned. Welcome back. In a significant boost for its operations, Apple has seen iPhone exports from India jump by a third in just 6 months through September. The tech giant exported nearly $6 billion worth of iPhones made in India, representing a threefold increase compared to last year. This surge puts India on track for annual exports to exceed $10 billion US. Apple is rapidly expanding its manufacturing footprint in the country, capitalizing on low subsidies, a skilled workforce, and advancements in technology. As tensions rise between Beijing and Washington, India is becoming a crucial part of Apple's strategy to reduce its reliance on China. NDTV's Sharat Nair brings us this report.
Apple has managed to beat its own effort, export records from last year, and they've jumped up by a third. They've actually shipped $6 billion worth of iPhones in the first few months of this fiscal year. There are a couple of things to note here, and let me start by the biggest. These are made in India iPhones. Secondly, this number could actually touch $10 billion by the time fiscal year 2024 ends. Third, this means dependence on China is going down even more. In India, Apple has three major suppliers down south. One is Foxconn, the other one is Pegatron, and then there's Tata Group, who just recently bought their unit from Wistron. The story of Apple actually trying to localize in India, that goes back to 2017, but was majorly assembling back then. This year, however, the news of Apple making the Pro models in India, that caught favorable, reasonable attention because the 16 Pro and the 16 Pro Max, they're the costliest products in the 16 lineup. Small little breakdown helps understand the scale of this entire picture also. iPhones make up a huge major chunk in overall smartphone exports from India, and while this number stood at around $2.88 billion for exports to the US in the beginning of this fiscal year, first five months. 5 years ago, the annual number of these exports to US stood at just $5.2 million. This is in line with Apple's India expansion plans, with new retail stores being planned, a lot of marketing efforts going, and increased focus on manufacturing being optimized here. Apple, however, still holds less than 10%, around 7% of share in India. That doesn't reflect the aspirational value that the brand holds in India. India is a huge character in Apple's global story. Apple is banking heavily on local subsidiaries, workforce that is skilled and easily available in India, and overall technological advancements that India is making. Like we said, post-COVID, there has been an active effort to stop complete dependence on China for manufacturing by a lot of companies, Apple included. A position that is being actively targeted by India.
To discuss more on this, we are joined by Dr. Asif Iqbal, foreign trade expert and is the president of Indian Economic Trade Organization, and Mithali Nikor, economist. Mithali, thank you very much for joining me on the discussion. China's argument is that India can't just snap its fingers and transform into a manufacturing powerhouse overnight. Should China be wary by this?
Hi, Rika. It's very good to see you on this platform. And, thank you so much for including me in the discussion. I think let's first focus on exactly why is Apple prioritizing manufacturing in India. It's not only a China plus one strategy. And I think that has been made very clear by the number of companies and the number of investments that India has seen in the last 2 to 3 years. A lot of these companies are here to stay. They are not just coming because they want to diversify from China. Yes, that is one motivation, but they are coming and they would have left if they had not had a conducive business environment. They would have left had they not had the skilled labor or at least trainable labor to produce the kind of quality that they require for exports. So the fact that India is giving them, not only some kind of incentives and benefits and subsidies, as you said, under the production linked incentive scheme, but also a manufacturing ecosystem that works. That is why those companies continue to stay and invest. And secondly, Apple is not only looking at the export strategy, but they're also looking at a strategy of selling domestically. So I think, when we say that, should China be saying this or not saying this, I think the question is, it's moot. India is ramping up its manufacturing capabilities for its own growth and for the job creation within the country. So I think we have to stop comparing ourselves to others and we have to create a better and better business environment so that, today companies, and we should be wary, from China, companies can leave and come to India, then they can leave India also. So, that's what we have to really invest in.
Right. Dr. Iqbal, is India slowly and steadily moving towards becoming a major manufacturing hub?
Yes, Vitaly, I feel that we are going to become a major manufacturing hub, especially because the states of Tamil Nadu has the Foxconn, manufacturing facility. And if you see, just 2 weeks back, there was a development in Taiwan, and 6 months back also the development where the CEO of Foxconn, Terry Gao, is now standing for elections in Taiwan. And, he wants to see that, there has to be some kind of understanding with China. But then last week, again, Chinese government arrested and detained a few of Foxconn's employees. So there's a lot of discomfort in Taiwan with the Foxconn company's operations for their interference in their a lot of functioning happening there. So that is one of the reasons why Foxconn is shifting a lot of its operations towards India and especially in Tamil Nadu. And I believe that it's a great blessing in disguise for us that this is happening, because Chinese do not want him to split the opposition votes in the upcoming elections.
Right. Mithali, decoupling from Chinese economy has become a shared strategic priority for both India and US. Would that help India pick up bulk orders from Silicon Valley giants like Apple?
Absolutely, Rika. I mean, there is no doubt about it. Apple is, of course, just one company. Tesla is another company that, for a long time, the Indian government has been looking at and saying that, okay, can we bring Tesla and more manufacturing from Tesla to India? There are a number of other manufacturing component companies, like B2B component companies, which, can and should look at India as a manufacturing base. And this would be very much in line with our national growth strategies, because we want to become the manufacturer of high-tech equipment. High-tech equipment requires highly skilled labor. And by setting up clusters, like we mentioned, Tamil Nadu again is one state. We have Maharashtra, we have Gujarat, we have, other states in the south. We have, new cities like Amravati and Gift City, on the west and, in the south coming up.
Right.
Each of these, cities offer a very conducive ecosystem for tech companies in the west, especially in the US, where there are also a lot of Indians who are working and can, facilitate this investment linkages.
Right. Dr. Iqbal, Apple accounts for just under 7% of India's smartphone markets. Will assembling it here also grow the customer base through competitive pricing?
Well, effect in pricing will happen because, the Indian labor force is much lesser, and also the fact that, we have a lot of consumer base in India itself. For these phones, that will increase the margins for Apple, and most of the phones that are manufactured here will be sold here. So the logistics cost is going to be saved for Apple, and the cost of packaging and printing will be saved for Apple. So that is a big costing, saving for Apple, because a huge number of customer base is coming from India itself. So that will be one big, win-win for Apple.
Mithali, the subsidies by Prime Minister Narendra Modi's administration helped Apple assemble its pricey iPhone 16 Pro and Pro Max models with better cameras and titanium bodies in India this year. But can India become its top market anytime soon?
So, in fact, Rika, while you were saying this, I was thinking about, the nationalism and the pride that I've heard a lot of people express when they are buying new iPhones these days. Especially when you talk to the Gen Z and the youth, they are very clear when they say, oh, by the way, have you seen my new phone? It's made in India. And, that feeling of nationalism today, of course, cost is important. But after a certain point, an Apple iPhone, even a 16 or a Pro Max, becomes equivalent to its next best, a Samsung, etc. There it can edge out just because of the national pride element, that people are proud that, this iPhone is made in India, and it's talked about very often in the final purchase decision.
Right.
So I do think that Apple has a bright future ahead. It's still an aspirational brand in India.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Iqbal and Mithali, for joining me on the discussion this evening. With that, a quick break on the show. More on the other side. Stay tuned.